So now I'm going to turn it over to you all for any type of questions or anything you want to ask. We threw out a lot of stuff at you in one shot. So please, anybody wants to discuss, ask, feel free. Yes.
It's very complicated.
What's that?
It's very complicated, of course. As you said, it's a paradox. So
It's a paradox. It's a paradox. But it's the idea of male and... It's Kabbalistic teaching of male and female. One of the aspects of Kabbalistic teaching. So did you get the idea, sort of?
I understand the concept of what you're conveying. It's the paradox in itself makes it very difficult to try to argue a point, because whatever one would argue, not them looking to argue it, it's the fact that it's inherently a paradox means that whatever the objection is to the situation, it's answered by the fact that it's a paradox.
Right.
So it doesn't really welcome or invite the opportunity to contradict the theory, because again, the inherent nature of it is one of complete paradox.
Right. Okay. So maybe rather than argue, maybe we'll talk about all the things that we agree about. Actually, I had a relationship with somebody one time. We decided, I work with people, I have coaching. I have a methodology that I call Ratzon counseling. We try to find their will, and we try to take the person to become that person that they want to be. So one of the people I was working with, we decided to, rather than to argue, to seek out a way to communicate where we would discuss only things we agreed about. It was actually a wonderful relationship with him. It changes the whole nature of things when you talk like that. But it eliminates a lot of the argument. Have you heard the concept before, anybody here, of perfect as is? Of looking at life as just perfect, just the way it is?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I thought I'd copyrighted that one, but apparently it's gotten out a little bit. Okay. It's a big one. It's very helpful for me personally. I'll be walking down the street and I'll say the words "perfect as is" every 15 seconds or so, and then just let my thoughts sort of wrap themselves around that idea.
And the question is, if it's perfect as is, then why pray 3 times a day for continued perfection or actually enhancement?
Sure.
So that's, again, to the paradox, your answer is
It's
already
the
there.
paradox. Yeah. Why try to do anything? Why pray? Why make efforts? Why work towards making things better? Why make, but it's exactly that paradox. Not to say that one is meant to cancel the other, or one is meant to be exclusive to the other. They're both turned up full volume all the way. Both of them. We ourselves can be complete only up to a certain point. We can have the male and female paradigm inside of ourselves, but if we don't have the opposite sex to constantly mirror us and to constantly guide us and to constantly hone that male and female part of ourselves, we'll be lacking. We'll be lacking ultimately that part of ourselves. So. Okay.
Getting back to the paradox, you have the perfecting and you have the perfect as is. And we kind of, Don was saying, we just sort of stop there. But I thought the whole point with the paradox is you can take it to a higher level. You can take those two concepts and get it to a higher level, which is the thesis, the antithesis, and then you got the synthesis on top. So what's the higher level concept when you put those two together? Where do you get to? Where's the next, where you build from there?
Okay, good point. So if you're able to master the art of walking through life saying perfect as is and saying everything's imperfect and I need to fix everything, so ultimately where that's going to take you, the synthesis that will take you, is to sort of a higher level of doing the same thing. to more subtle and more fine-honed ways of looking at life as being perfect and imperfect and dealing with it on that sense. I don't think we ever break out of that pattern, to the best of my knowledge. I think we constantly are having to walk that walk, to dance that dance of perfect and imperfect. And I think that it's just that we can get to much higher levels.
What does that mean, higher levels?
Higher levels means that that instead of seeing life, when I'm at a lower level, when I say perfect as is, my perfect as is okay as far as being able to deal with lightweight challenges, dealing with things that are not too difficult for me. But I can't, when things are traumatic, when things really hit me in the face in a very difficult way, I can't, it's very hard for me to really feel that it's perfect as is. So higher level is perfect as is being a person of equanimity, a person who can say, whatever comes my way, it's absolutely perfect. There's more and more subtler and higher levels that we can graduate into. So that's for being perfect as is, and for perfecting, and for constantly seeking ways of fine-tuning things. It says in the Kabbalistic teachings, it says in a book called Shar HaGilgulim, the Gates of Reincarnation, that when a person, after people pass away from this world, so every year on the day of their passing, we have a tradition that's called the Yortzeit. The Yortzeit is the day that the person passed away, or the day that they're buried. There's different opinions. On that day, a person has sort of a day of judgment, so to speak, in the higher worlds. That's what's taught in the Kabbalistic teachings. And that judgment is an opportunity for them to get to an even higher level. Right? They re-look at the person's life, at what they did during their lifetime. But they look at it in an even higher and subtler and more fine-tuned type of a way.
You're saying the people that are alive?
No, the people that have passed away already.
People that have passed away are looking at their lives.
Their lives are looked at. They come before they're being judged. They come before the committee, so to speak. The people that have passed away already.
Yeah, but who looking at it?
Who's looking at it? God and his tribunals, his angels, the people that are in charge of looking at these types of situations. So what happens is that they go through the same stories again. You know, here I was, and I met this person, and I made the wrong decisions, and I did this and I did that, and they go through the whole video again. But once you passed 1 year, you passed that, in order to pass the test and pass the judgment the next year, so you have to even be on a higher level, even more fine-tuned. So there's like endless levels. The same thing with regards to your question. You get endless levels of perfect as is and perfection as well. What we do in our life. That's also the reason, by the way, when a person does have a Yortzeit, so their relatives that are still alive, they try to do things to show the tribunal, so to speak, in this upper world that this person was a really good person. They talk about the person. They do. There's certain rituals they do for the person. They say a kaddish for the person. They do different
Study
types.
of this.
They study in merit of that person. They discuss the good traits that the person had. One of the best ways of elevating a soul is to try to emulate their traits, the good traits that they had while they were alive. Especially the relatives, people that were close to this person.
The soul remember the life what he was living.
He does, but he or she does. He remembers what
what
happened.
level?
What's that?
In what level?
On what level? The whole idea of the afterlife is that the thing that's called the body, which is a filter that separates us from seeing our true selves, our true soul is let down. That body's no longer filtering, it's no longer holding back. Before a person can see, even before they pass away, a person can see from their entire life in a single second. Because they're getting a taste of what it is to live without a body at that point. So there's many, many levels. There's a level of the immediate time of their passing, and there's levels of, like we're saying now, each year they get to subtler and subtler and subtler levels.
How long does that go on for?
Some people reincarnate. In fact, according to the Kabbalists, everybody reincarnates. Everybody comes back. And so when they come back, depends on whatever their specific judgment is determined to be. But
Rabbi, a question: isn't the your side something that is relevant for the living, but not for the souls? Since the souls are, if the souls are in another level, and the infinite doesn't matter. You don't have time and space in the infinite, so a year has no meaning when you don't have in the infinite. So the year does have meaning for in our eyes, because we think that time is linear. But for the soul, why would it make a difference?
the time and space don't exist on the same level that we understand it here in our body. But there definitely is some type of a measurement, some type of a here and a there. There's definitely a yard site. There's a year that happens later. There's definitely some type of a measurement that happens from 1 year, from our year from 1 year to the next year. So it's not, you're right that they sort of blend into some type of the infinite being, but they still manage to keep a hand in what is going on here, and sort of keep an awareness of their own life as well. They're according to the Jewish Kabbalistic teachings, the post-life is basically a mirror of the life that they lived while they were here.
Not to overcomplicate the situation, though. The person is reincarnated. If you're having yard site for that individual, then you're not really having yard site.
That's a good question. No, that's a very good question. So we never know. We never know when that is. So usually we just, because of the not knowing, we do the yard site for the person. But basically the idea is that, if a person comes back, you're right. There's no, that soul is here. Although there is, there can be subdivisions of that soul as well. Partially there and partially here. There could be some of that as well. But yeah, that's part and parcel of the whole package as well. Definitely so.
Does the soul up there know what we're doing down here?
It's a whole discussion in the Talmud itself, if they know what's going on down here, right? So there's various levels. There's the closer they are in time after their passing, the more they know what's going on here. The more immediate, the post-life immediate is very much aware of what's going on. And then the soul sort of goes in various stages of leaving that consciousness, that awareness. It also depends not only on time, it depends on the sort of the judgment of what happens to that soul. If that soul is there are some souls who never leave sort of this domain in a way. They're in sort of like what's called a kafakela. They're just sort of going back and forth without really coming to a certain type of a rest point. There's some souls like that. Some souls are so high and so developed and so elevated that they basically have no knowledge of what's going on. And in order to have a knowledge, when as a Kabbalistic students, we would travel to the graves of the righteous people. We traveled twice a month. We went on the 15th of the month, and we went on the day before the new moon, the day before Rosh Chodesh. Every month, we traveled to the north, to the Galilee, and we said prayers at the graves of certain key tzaddikim, certain key righteous people. And with certain of them, so my rabbi is a great Kabbalist, he would actually, the practice was he would tell him the news. He would tell him what's going on. He would say, hey, listen, Rabbi such and such, things are pretty tough for Israel right now. You know, we just had a Katyusha attack, and we just had this thing going on, and I need to tell you the news so that you know what's going on. And he does this with the understanding that they're really not aware of what's going on in their world. So I need to inform you what's going on so that you'll know, and you'll tell all your friends up there as well. So there's that's an example of not being so aware of what's going on. Also, there's another practice where the Kabbalists will do a what's called hakafa. They'll go around the grave a number of different times, and that going around the grave definitely like brings down the energy of the lower level soul energy of the departed, so that they can be aware and they can pray for us as well. They can be aware of our presence at this place. So we're going all over the place here. We're going to. We started with male.
Why go to the grave?
Reincarnation. We went, huh?
Why go to the grave? Like, can't that soul be everywhere, or can that soul accompany or be,
Yeah.
why go to the specific place where the body was buried?
It's a good question. It's a good question. So, for the most part, the Kabbalists will believe that you have to actually be present there for them to have an awareness of you. There's actually a physical your physical presence in that gravesite actually will be felt by them, whereas if you're not there, not. However, there are certain Kabbalists. The midnight yeshiva that I've been learning at for many years was started by a great Kabbalist named Reb Mordechai Sharabi. And Reb Mordechai Sharabi used to say he doesn't need to go on Lag BaOmer to the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because Rabbi Shimon's coming here. We just learn a little bit about this tzaddik, and he'll be here with us. And he was 100% sure of himself. So there's different approaches to that issue. But yeah. So.
I don't know, maybe I either came from a backward family or we was very religious at home. But in Beshert was mean not only in marriage, but every step in your life.
Absolutely.
Actually, one of my uncle believed that we have certain words, and that's how much we're going to say in our life. Uh-huh. So when he was a child, like 8 or 9 year old, he didn't talk a lot because he wanted to have a long life, okay?
Right.
But
right.
I don't know, and I'm very mixed up with my feelings because my mother even went out to my grandfather's grave and asked for his please, for our behalf, please do something for this and that.
Help us out, right.
I don't know. I don't know what should I believe or not.
Mm-hmm. I
Okay.
understand. I understand. First of all, with regard to how many words you get during a lifetime, that'd be a really nice thing to say to certain talkative people that that I'm familiar with. But there's different opinions about of what that means exactly. There's certain things we can say which don't sort of come up that we're not docked with. It's not taken off of our merit, our scoreboard. But that's one issue. But I absolutely agree with you, and I'm glad you brought that point up. Beshert is not only between a man and a woman. Beshert is every aspect of life, basically. We're meant to be who we're with. We're meant to be where we are. We're meant to work where we work. We're meant to live where we live. We're meant to experience what we experience. All of these things are Beshert. All of these things. We walk through the great Hasidic master, the one who basically was the founder of the Hasidic movement, the Baal Shem Tov. His teaching was that the more that you believe that everything is beshert, the more everything will be beshert. The more that you believe, the more that you reel with the fact that you're being led every step of your life to the exact situations that you find yourself in, the more that you literally will be led. The more you will be customized, personalized, guided in that situation. That's the Baal Shem Tov. The more you don't believe that, the more you're not real with that, the more your life becomes haphazard.
But if I believe that, I would like to believe that, but why should anybody fight for anything? Because if it's Beshert, it's going to be happen with me anyway.
That's the paradox.
That's
Perfect as is, but
exactly.
yet you have
Perfect
to.
Why
as
should
is.
I go to a doctor? I would get well anyway because it's Beshert to me to
Right.
get well.
Right.
But when the Lubavitcher rabbi was sick, they was really praying every day on the street
Absolutely.
to get him well and get him the best doctor. And they was wishing him to really to get well. And he was
Absolutely.
in the hospital for days and they pushed the doctors to do something.
Mhm.
If that Beshert, he should leave, he would leave, but it wasn't Beshert.
So that's what we were saying earlier, that perfect as is, I mean, everything is perfect just the way it is. At the same time, I have to say that everything is imperfect. Everything needs for me to, I need to step in and fix things up. I can't just leave things the way they are. It's a paradox, it's a contradiction.
Yes.
But it's in a way, it's a little bit of, if you compare, not that I'm an expert in this, but if you compare Eastern mysticism with Kabbalah, with Jewish mysticism, that's sort of the difference. One of the major, they have a lot that's alike, but one of the major differences between them is that Kabbalah says we have to fix things up. We have to perfect the world. It's not a matter of being okay with the way things are, being detached from the way things are. That's half of it. We believe that also. We believe perfect as is also. That's the female paradigm we talked about. But we also believe that we need to fix things up. We're here in this world with unfinished business. We wouldn't have, according to the theory of reincarnation, we wouldn't have come back to this world unless we had something to do here. Something that we didn't complete in a previous time. And we can sort of experience and tell what that is based on the difficulty, how difficult it is for us. But that's what we're here for.
So to simplify the paradox, that nothing is really a problem.
On
It's
the
a
one
challenge.
hand, that's a good
It's a
way to say it.
challenge.
It's a good way to say
You
it.
deal with your challenges, and to
Yeah.
the extent that your problems become challenges and not problems, you can then accept more and then live life with greater joy.
Absolutely, absolutely. You said that very beautifully. It's not a problem. You don't have to be neurotic about it. You don't have to feel like, that I'm constantly beset by these problems and I can't, I have no room to breathe.
If anything, Hashem gives us the challenge to improve ourselves.
Right. Right, exactly.
Question before, we were talking about praying to the souls of our ancestors for help.
Not praying to the souls necessarily, but sort of using them as a channel
Advocate?
to
An
get
advocate?
to God. Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I was understood you pray to Hashem,
Yeah.
Yes.
I just it's sort of, I think that'd be more appropriate to say in that way.
I just want to make one comment about
Please do.
I'm not an expert in Eastern philosophy, but I know a little bit about it.
Okay.
And I think it's not as different as you think because
Mhm.
they feel that by being compassionate to yourself and therefore others, you are repairing
You
the
are
world.
repairing the world. I hear that point.
And you're
I hear that
bringing less aggression
point.
and less violence
That's
and
a good-
less
that's a very
hatred
good
into
point.
the energy of the world. So it's similar.
I hear that. That's very good. So you do have to make an effort in order, right? You do have to make an effort in order to do. You have to step up and do things.
Yeah.
Actually, according to that philosophy as well. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
When does the process end with the souls coming back? When is that kind of finally finished and all the souls can just stay where they need to be? Because you say there was unfinished business. I mean, does that just continue on and on?
No,
forever?
it doesn't continue forever. No, no. There's unfinished business up until business gets finished, until everybody gets perfected, until the world basically gets perfected. I mean, in terms of like history, so the Kabbalists say like the major shift has to happen at least 6,000 years after the creation of the world, right? If we go literally with the creation years of the world. So we're now in year 5772, 5,772. So maximally that can, this perfecting process, or this era of finishing unfinished business, of rectification, will go, at the maximum, it will go on for another 228. How much is that? 228 years. But we still have a belief that it can happen any day as well. It can happen any day as well. So
Can happen
That's-
today as well if we bring it.
if we bring it, right.
Not
if we do
by
the work.
itself.
No.
Yeah, by itself, it's the bad way.
By itself, it will be, right, exactly.
I heard one of Stephen's rabbis, Rabbi Satan, saying that he made a beautiful analogy about Shabbat. That Shabbat is the kind of a simulation of the Yemot HaMashiach, of getting back to the
Days
light,
of the
days
Messiah.
of the Messiah,
Right.
relating to Messiah not as a person but as a goal, not as a physical person.
It's a state
And-
of consciousness.
Yeah, as a state of consciousness, and it was saying that we need to bring it in a good way, the same way that we simulate, or the same way that we bring it every week by bringing the Shabbat. And he was even mentioning that gesture of doing like this, like bringing
over the candles.
yeah, like bringing it to me.
Mhm.
You bring it to yourself, like you're practicing for, and I thought it
bringing
was
it.
a beautiful
It's a beautiful analogy.
analogy.
It's exactly these 6,000 years are compared to the 6 days of the week, where the seventh day is the Sabbath, is the Shabbat, and so that's already the day of Mashiach, so to speak.
So taking it down to the 228 years, that definitively, one would believe that at that particular junction, everything will be,
We'll be more or less. We'll go into a different era. It won't be the end of time. It's more or less the idea that the era of rectification is done, and now begins an era of what's called unification. It's a whole different thrust. It's a whole different focus at that time. But it
none of us
happen-
can live that long,
Huh?
but none of us
Right.
will live that long, but,
Our souls
yes, they will.
Right.
But I'll go back to at the year 6,000, if at that juncture there's not some tremendous event that takes place,
Then what?
then what? And does that, not this can be challenged here in a rational discussion, but
Uh-huh.
is it firmly believed that by 6,000, this belief system has to come to a culmination of some sort?
Yeah, there's a firm belief in it. Absolutely. If not before, again. If not before at that time. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question then.
Yes.
And I promised myself I was just going to listen and not ask, but now I have to.
All right.
I've always asked different rabbis, how they reconcile creation with Darwinism, evolution, Big Bang, whatever theory you want to go with. So if Kabbalah is so strictly holding to this 6,000 year thing, then this becomes a very important question for you. How do you even begin to reconcile that we're in 5772 in a world where, scientists and Big Bang theorists and everybody else can point to dinosaurs living millions of years ago and everything else? How do you work that out?
If you've heard of Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who was a great teacher, he lived here in New York. He passed away probably about 20 years ago, 20 some odd years ago. He was a physicist as well, a rabbi physicist, and he figured out, based on a whole other different Kabbalistic theory, how this 5772 number of years could reconcile with how many years our science is talking about 10 billion or 10 million or something like that with the
10 billion,
dinosaurs.
Billion.
15 billion. Okay, whatever it might be.
Right there.
Okay, all right.
I'm not
So-
saying they're right. Just
No, I understand. So basically, the idea is that one of the ideas he spoke about, there's two different principles he introduced to make the two jive. One of them is that we have a statement, we have a teaching that a day for God is 1,000 years for man. So the 6 days of creation is already, we add a huge amount of time to that as well. And so that's, and not only that, but this 6,000 year cycle we're in right now, according to many Kabbalists, is only one of many cycles. So that we're in a 6,000 year perfection cycle, but there was a whole other 6,000 years before that also. And each of those years was not only a year, but each of those years was expanded to exponentially. So he came up with a whole mathematical formula to basically jive Kabbalistic teachings with this as well.
so it's like the Seder, right? When they say that each night was like 1,000 years in the eyes of Rabbi Ozi, right? So
Right,
just-
exactly, right. Or each plague was 50 plagues, or the same idea. Right, exactly. Right. Right, exactly. Some
Well, Dr.
mathematical wizardry, right.
We interviewed Dr. Schroeder, who's a physicist and also a religious Jew, and he said that it's all the question of how you view time. So time from the beginning, when the Big Bang occurred, was very different than time now. So what he figured out is the first day of creation was like 9 billion years. The second day of creation was like 5 billion years. The third day was like 2 billion years. And it keeps getting smaller because you're viewing time from the beginning moving out, as opposed to where we are, where we're looking at time coming towards us. So it depends on which way you're viewing time. But he did a similar thing to Rabbi Kaplan. He agrees that the Big Bang happened 15 billion years ago, but at the same time, we're in this 6,000 year cycle that you're talking about. So I'm sure a lot of people have talked about this.
Yeah, people do.
I like the way Stephen put it very much. I do, because the idea about the explosion, right, and how long does that explosion take?
And you're behind it,
Yeah,
looking
that's-
this way.
Right. I can sort of dream about that easier than I can. That 50 days equals 1,000 days, and the days,
It's a little hard to swallow, I understand.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm going to use that in my head.
What does Kabbalah say about other universes? Like in science, they keep discovering more galaxies, more universes, and there's not obviously, but I would imagine that there's life in other places too, that we're not the only place in existence that has life or intelligent
Right.
beings. What does Kabbalah say about that?
I think Rabbi Kaplan also related to that question about life in other parts of the universe or different universes. And what I recall is he did not, negate it. He didn't deny that it's a possibility. We haven't had, I don't think a lot has been written about it that I've seen, at least. But the chance that it might be is not necessarily against religion or against Kabbalah or against some basic principles of what life is all about.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the fact that we don't know whether it's true or not is sort of at least keeps our world as being a central, the central plane of the universe. But not that it's. I don't think they deny that it could be, that it could exist. That's what I heard. But he relates to it. He's more specific than that. He relates to it specifically and shows how, even with sources, how definitely could be.
You know how you were saying earlier how Kabbalah is the physics of the divine? like when you learn the Zohar, it goes into details about like dimensions and worlds, and they go into numbers. It's like very, very technical. Is it possible that they're also describing things that actually exist on a physical plane? And like, why would they need to describe things in such a specific measurement if it's just spiritual existence?
So what's the question exactly?
The question
Why
is
why
For
the
us to be able
specifics?
to understand.
Huh?
For us to be able to understand.
But when they're explaining it, they're explaining in physical terms. So isn't the danger of explaining things in physical terms that it'll like be interpreted in physical ways? And when there's concepts in Kabbalah that refer to God in a way that's very anthropomorphic, isn't that something that is against classic Judaism, where you're not supposed to describe God in physical ways? Isn't that, I mean, that's one of the things that I struggle with in Kabbalah. There's so many things in it that are so the opposite of Judaism. And I'm like, how are they able to get away with that?
It's not that they're. It's a great question. It's a question that's taken up by a lot of Kabbalists as well. The whole idea of anthropomorphism, and the very fact that we're discussing the idea of male and female paradigms. We have I have a long list of male and female paradigms in the divine realm. Male and female sphirot, male and female, what are called personas. And these are all the idea of all anthropomorphisms, whether they're in Kabbalah or not in Kabbalah, or whether they're just in the normal Torah. God said, God saw, God knows, God acted, God changed, God came down. God,
Yeah.
Those are all anthropomorphisms as well.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of it is that without anthropomorphisms, we have no way to fathom spirituality. We have no way to understand what is actually going on. That's what we talked about earlier, this whole constriction process of creation did that. It exactly enabled us to understand spirituality on our level. If you read a lot of the Kabbalistic writings, you have a whole, almost an erotic description of reality. You have the male and female and their couplings and what happens, and the children, a whole family story with grandfathers and fathers and mothers and sons and daughters and growth and generations. And so how can that be in spirituality? But the idea is that it's brought in that analogy type of form so that the human ear can hear it, so that we can somehow relate to it. But we're meant to learn it not in a literal sense. We're meant to learn it in a way, in an analogical sense, that we're able to understand. Well, what it means is, that's the way we're meant to learn it.
Just one thing that I heard from Rabbi Aaron, he was saying that it's like trying to explain color to a blind person, that someone that was born blind. So you'll find analogies, and you'll try to explain that. Of course, but the person won't be able to understand it until he experiences that. So they said that the Kabbalists, they experienced that, and they the only way they could transmit it to us who are blind to it is by using earthly analogies. But it's not doesn't mean that it is this way. It's just the only way to express it.
Yeah.
That's
All prophets also, for that matter, not just Kabbalists. All prophets conveyed their prophecy through analogies, through all kinds of one form or another of analogy, except possibly with the exception of Moses. This is, Moses was able to experience God in what's called an aspakleria me'ira, through a window, so to speak. That's how we related to God. And all the prophets related to God through a mirror. They were just reflecting their own selves, what they received, their own way of thinking, their own analogies, their own understandings. But that needed then an interpretation to be understood. It's a good question, though. It's a classic question. Anybody else?
Would you say that also not claiming, but looking at the Torah as being a metaphor for your own development, for your own spiritual development, is also a way of kind of conveying to us humans another dimension in a way that we can understand.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. The Torah is meant to be that. The Torah is meant to be a sort of a reflection of who we are, basically. We have within us the story of the Exodus. We have within us the story of the crossing of the Red Sea and the giving of the Torah and Abraham's sacrificing. All these biblical stories and all these everything else is every aspects of our lives, basically. So they're all meant to reflect to us our own experience. And we're meant to learn it in that way, actually. My teachers always taught me, first use your own head, and then check out what the commentaries say. Mm-hmm. How do you understand it? That's where in learning Torah, that's where the real rectification comes. First, see the way you learn it. Then, when you read the commentaries, you'll understand them a lot better also. But that's our tikkun. That's the rectification in learning, is see your own, what's your own take? How do you understand things?
Is that why every weekly Torah portion seems to have some relevance in what's going on
Absolutely.
in our life that very week?
Absolutely.
It always has
It's
something
ad
that
infinitum. Ad
it's
infinitum.
Constantly, every week. It's
Ad infinitum.
relevant to
lessons
today.
and relevance. And
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely that way. You guys tired out yet?
I think we touched on a lot of good topics.
Yeah, we
Thank you
did.
so much for
My
coming.
pleasure.
Can we finish with a song or
Glad
something,
to come.
Rabbi? Is there something? Can we finish with a song?
We could. We could.
You're a movie producer. You know how it works. Did you get your application?
Not yet.
Did you read about someone else?
I heard about it. I didn't read it.
I emailed you.
Yeah.
Okay. One more quick meditation, everybody.
One quick meditation.
And then we'll turn on the air conditioning. Thanks for coming. Bye, Joe.
For many years, I was learning in a midnight yeshiva in Nachlaot, in the neighborhood in Jerusalem. And I wrote a song about that experience of being in that neighborhood for all those years. And it's sort of a meditative song also. Well, I'm walking down those midnight alleys with a yearning in my heart. It's a yearning burning for a higher living, and it's tearing me all apart. And I wake up with all my troubles and frustrations that are dragging me to the ground. And I walk into the waters of salvation, and my troubles become my crown. This is my song every night, a prayer to the light of my life. This is my song every night. This is my midnight song. I want to walk with you, I want to talk with you, I want to see you in my dreams. But you hide your face and I fall on my face and my pain is all too real. Sometimes I feel like I am flying in a place where the living are always alive. This is my song every night. This is my midnight song. Midnight is my holiest time. Midnight is my favorite time. Midnight is the holiest time of day. Midnight is my favorite time. Midnight is King David's time. Midnight is the holiest time of day. When I'm walking down those midnight alleys with a yearning in my heart, there's a yearning burning for a higher living. It's tearing me all apart. This is my midnight song. This is my midnight song. This is my midnight song. Thank you. Thank you all.